are still living in times of COVID-19 and meeting restrictions. You can tune in. This is certainly on the district's YouTube channel that you'll be able to find this information. Madam Secretary, would you please take roll and help us determine a quorum, please?
You bet. Director Cooney?
Here.
Director DeVee?
Here.
Graba?
Here.
Finn?
Here.
Carter? Morgan?
Here.
Sure.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Great, thank you very much. In the last month, we have tried to do a couple of different things as we acclimate to a world of virtual meetings, and one of them is to have someone else lead us in the pledge. Tonight, I am very excited to share with you, we have the first female Boy Scout troop in Muscatine that will be leading us in the pledge. They have pre-recorded themselves. They are troop number 1127. You will see Zuzu, Naomi, Dovey, Lauren, Shelby, Leo, and Fiona will be leading the pledge this evening. So please enjoy this video.
Hi, we're Troop 1127, the first girl troop in Muscatine in Scouts BSA. We formed on February 1st, 2019, and we do all sorts of cool things like camping, kayaking, canoeing, rock climbing, different types of trips. And right now we are planning a 2-week long trip, doing a week of kayaking and a week of hiking, both 50 miles. Troop attention, Scout salute, color guard opinion. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We thank Troop 1127 for leading us, and I forgot to add, they are all Muskies. So we are excited to watch them continue to grow on their Muskie journey, and again, thank them for leading us this evening. The next item on our agenda is our public hearing. This is on the consideration of the proposal to participate in the Instructional Support Program. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I move to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to open the public hearing. I will ask our board secretary if she will please do a roll call vote for that.
Director Cooney?
Yes.
DeVee?
Aye.
Graba?
Aye.
Finn?
Aye.
Morgan?
Yes.
Sure.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
We are now in the public hearing for discussion. Does anyone have anything Tom, is there anything specifically that you want to add to give us on this proposal for the Instructional Support Program? Tom, you are on mute.
All right, here we go. So I'm at the 2900 and there's no public here to inquire about the instructional support levy, but we did receive one written comment, and I believe the school board saw that comment. It was from Nathan Mather. So,
okay.
And of course, this is the we're at the timeline where we're having our public hearing, and then later on in the agenda, we will, it's on the agenda to approve the resolution. So, I mean, right now it's just, oral or written comments from the public for this part of the agenda. So.
Okay. So you'll give us some more, you'll give us more commentary a little bit later is what you're telling me.
Yeah, I can. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else? Lisa, is there anything else? Tom's covered the written comments that have been received. There's no one at 2900 currently. Tom, I appreciate you camping out there to cover that. Again, these are unique times. To do that is helpful. Okay.
Yep, I have not received any other.
All right. Well, this piece of our work was to allow if the community had anything that they wanted to add to do that. So we are aware of the one written comment we've received. I would entertain a motion to then close the public hearing.
I'll move to close.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Madam Secretary, would you take us through a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Director Cooney,
Aye.
Director DeVete,
Aye.
Draba,
Aye.
Finn,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Thank you. And again, we'll come back to that for action a little bit later in the meeting. The next portion of our meeting is for the board to review targets and goals and a superintendent update. And I'm just going to read through the 3 goals because I feel it's important that we share that. And it's what we all are striving for as we do our work. So students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably, and students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. Jerry, I will pass it to you because I don't get to do that too many more times.
Yeah. Well, I'll try not to drop it. So we are fortunate tonight to have all the chairs of the Return to Learn committee here, and they're going to give an update on where their work is at. And they'll talk a little bit how the vetting process went with community and staff. I just really want to tip my hat to these people and all of the people serving on these committees. I don't know of many districts that are going in the depth at this point yet on some of these topics. It's really hard work because we have not gotten a lot of guidance from the state yet. But I think what we're doing is going to set a really good foundation for decisions that are going to have to be made in mid and late July. And I think that's the other thing I would really want to remind the board that we're going to have to be nimble and we're going to have to be really flexible because it seems like a week in this COVID-19 thing is like a lifetime, and things can change quickly. And so we want to make sure that we have a structure in place that will allow the best opportunity for the district to move forward, recognizing that there's going to be some detours and changes as we get closer to the start date. So I'll turn it over to the chairs, and maybe Mike, you can kick us off.
So thanks a lot, Jerry. The Return to Learn Committee chair is Stephanie Zellick, Becky Richards, and Stacy Orr, and myself. We're very excited tonight to share out with the board and update the board on the progress of our Return to Learn Committee work. I'll kind of kick it off by providing the board a status update of our committee work. The committees are in the process of finalizing their recommendations, which are due next Tuesday, June 16th. The board will be able to review the committee recommendations beginning June 19th in preparation for our June 22nd board meeting. At our June 22nd board meeting, our committees will present their recommendations, and this will be an opportunity for the board to discuss and provide our committee feedback on their recommendations as well. Additionally, on the 22nd, the board will be provided an overview and have an opportunity to discuss and approve our state Return to Learn plan, which needs to be submitted by July 1st. The state has yet to release the document. We're hoping that we get it any day now. We're looking for it every day. So, but the board will have a chance to see that on the 22nd and approve that as well. On Monday, May 27th, as a stakeholder survey was sent to parents, students, and teachers regarding the online learning module that took place during the COVID app closure, as well as their thoughts on returning to school this fall. We had an incredible response from our Muskie constituents. It was 796 parents, 278 students, and 268 teachers, as well as 232 non-teaching staff responded to the survey. The district is currently gathering that data from the surveys and organizing it in a shareable format. This will be given to the Return to Learn committees on this Thursday, for subgroups to use as they continue their work on their Return to Learn plan. The survey's results will also be added to the Google site sometime this week and shared out with board members as well. And the board will have an opportunity to ask questions regarding these survey results at the June 22nd special board meeting additionally. A couple other things I would like to mention before I turn it over to another chair is a calendar update. To provide our stakeholders planning time, I wanted to share out that the calendar committee recommendation is to keep the original starting date of August 24th the same. But I think the committee is also emphasizing that the calendar for this upcoming school year needs to be fluid and flexible as well. Another update I have for the board on Return to Learn is really, we have started our Return to Learn plan already with our summer sports. Baseball and softball will have their first games next week. We are practicing and honoring the social guidelines that have been given to us, in particular busing, 13 students, players per bus, and also spectator distance of 6 feet. But it does probably pose a question that the board wants to probably ponder as you review our recommendations, is the difference between a recommendation or a requirement and a guideline. I think you're going to see a lot of scenarios where it's a guideline and some scenarios where it's a recommendation. And obviously both of those have impact, maybe budgetary, those type of things, that as you're looking at it, we encourage you to ask those questions. Additionally, the other thing I want to mention, in July, the district hopes to put together a question and answer document after all of our recommendations are finalized, and send that out to our stakeholders, kind of communicating the Return to Learn recommendations, as well as discussing the rationale behind those. With that, I will turn it over to Stephanie, and she's going to kind of give you an overview and some updates on our website.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to go ahead and present. If you cannot see my screen, please let me know. My responsibility tonight is to share with you our Return to Learn site. And I wanted to just kind of highlight how we're communicating with families and stakeholders as to where we are in the process. So we modeled the Return to Learn site that we have as Muskies after what the Department of Ed has. They also have a Google site, and we're pulling a lot of their recommendations, a lot of their resources into our Return to Learn site. This is available just like the continuous learning was available to families. It's linked here at the top. And so if you visit the Muskie Return to Learn website, you're able to see the committees, and you would be able to contact any of those committee members via email. So this highlights those as a member of the Curriculum and Assessment Committee, the Special Populations, and the Operations. So these were the team members who worked to create those subcommittees to work on the recommendations. Lisa has also linked the vetting information. So these were community members, parents, students, stakeholders that received the survey that Stacy is going to talk about and were able to give feedback. We also have the timeline linked here as part of the plan. We are working right here. We just finished the external vetting. We were able to compile all of those comments into that 53-page document that is rather lengthy, but the feedback was very helpful. And again, Stacy's going to go over more of that. And then this week will be used to have subcommittee meetings to refine the recommendations to take that feedback and make the necessary suggestions. And then we'll continue working towards a final draft that we'll be presenting to the board on the 22nd. Resources, this is a link to, we've asked for the subcommittee leaders to submit any current research that they've found, including what the CDC is recommending, what any sort of research that we've been able to compile, including what the Department of Ed is also recommending. So this is kind of a one-stop shop for families who want articles about, frequently asked questions about COVID. What is the Department of Ed saying? Just a nice one page or one place that you can go to for kind of current research. So that has been really helpful for our subcommittee leaders to be able to have these as resources. And like Mike mentioned, we have new research coming out almost on a weekly basis. So we continue to add resources to this document as we learn more. The Return to Learn template is also linked here. So these would be kind of the first draft of recommendations that are divided into those 3 areas of curriculum and assessment. The subcommittee members are listed here, and then any additional documentation that they've added is listed also. Special populations, if you scroll down, their recommendations are listed here. And again, this is a working document. So after receiving feedback, we did an internal round, and then we just finished the external round. And so these recommendations are constantly changing, ebbing and flowing as we learn more about COVID. And then finally, our operations right down here. We have the full committee meetings. We've had 3, we will have 3 of those. Like Mike mentioned, on Thursday, we're meeting again with the full committee. And those are recordings that are listed here. Survey results. This is the newest tab. And as we get those survey results back, we are compiling those, and then we'll post those so that the public is able to view our survey results and know that their feedback has been very impactful in the plan as we move forward. So does anyone have any specific questions for me about the website? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy, and she'll kind of talk through more information about the survey.
Okay, mine will probably be nice and short here, since otherwise I'll be repeating a lot of what's already been said. I'm going to go ahead and also present. Okay, so starting off, just going back to this timeline here, you can see we've been working on this for over a month now, and just really, again, proud of all the work that's been done. Every administrator is involved as a chair on a subcommittee. And as was mentioned, we had our first internal vetting done May 22nd through June 1st. And so basically what we did is we sent out that very same survey to those internal members so that they can kind of make sure that they're looking at each other's work. They were able to see if there was any crossover, if there was, things that they noticed that maybe that we needed to talk across, different committees, so that we can maybe work a little bit together, or others might have had a just different perspective on things. And that's where we saw our first round of revisions. And then once those were done, we told them that we were going to send this out to an external group on June 1st. And so the external feedback form, they had a link to the Return to Learn plan. And so they were able to see the plan, and then they let us know who they represented. So we obviously had representation from parents, students, classified staff, certified staff, and community members. As of today, we've received almost 80 responses. And then that was compiled into the document that you guys obviously received. What we asked them to do is, just gonna click one here, is to make sure that they kind of give us some feedback and provide opportunity to ask questions that they needed on the action steps. Sorry about that. I have a bunch of people coming into my driveway here. Usually doesn't happen. He's awful very quiet usually. So anyway, that feedback then, we're really hopeful that our committee members, which they received that feedback today, and we're really hopeful that they're really going to be able to take that, internalize it, reflect on it, and really make some great revisions for that final draft that's going to be then given to us on June 16th. And that final draft, then we will take a look at and make sure it's ready to send out to all of you guys in preparation for that 22nd board meeting.
All right.
I think it's Becky's turn.
It is. Thank you. So our Return to Learn plan is twofold. It will help guide us when we begin in the fall, as well as move our district forward with future work that will be developed. So as this process has evolved, there has been some noticings and some different pieces that may jumpstart some future work with the curriculum audit. So identifying those pieces within the Return to Learn plan with pieces in the curriculum audit may serve as a dual purpose. As Stacy and Stephanie and Mike talked about the vetting group, the external vetting group was a very diverse group. So there was a total of 255 that had the opportunity to give us direct feedback. And as everyone had said, we will help, that feedback will help refine and articulate our Return to Learn plan for the district. So those vetting groups included students and parents, non-certified staff, community members, and certified staff. So on the Return to Learn website, there is a list of the vetting groups, so you can easily look and see all of those names that are on that had an opportunity. And then we are also going to be giving them access to the results of the vetting responses on the website, so they can see other responses as well. Our committees and subcommittees, they have spent numerous hours researching best practices, attending virtual webinars that the state and other resources have provided. Many agencies have held webinars and sent documents for us to review. Different professional organizations such as ASCD, SAI, CDC, AEA, state departments within the Department of Education, the BOEE, as well as our UEN professional learning groups, they have provided much information to read and to analyze. And we feel that this knowledge has really helped us articulate and develop this plan that is pretty deep and it's pretty wide. Many of us receive emails, a lot of emails from our colleagues around the state, basically asking for help, guidance, or just they plain need some actual artifacts on specific topics or maybe a template to look at. I've also become very aware that some districts approach this in a different manner than we did. Their plan was just a few people from central office ended up creating their plan or are in the midst of creating it. I'm very fortunate that our district has included numerous people and that this work has been a collaborative process since its inception way back in March. You will see the depth of this work on June 22nd when we share the recommendations with all of you. And I hope that you too are excited as we are excited to share the work that lots and lots of many hands have been involved and voices have been involved in too. So at this time, we'll open it up for any questions or clarifications or any comments, knowing that June 22nd is going to be a big evening for us as well.
Becky, I don't have a question. First of all, I would like to say millions of thanks to the whole group. and the whole team. I know it's a lot of work. I look forward to sit down this weekend and go through this full report for sure and go point by point, but also I look forward for our discussion on the 22nd. So millions of thanks. I don't have any question for now before I look at the report, but thank you.
Becky?
Mhm.
The only real question that I have has more to do with, yes, we sounded like we got a good portion of people that actually returned those to you, but you said something about there was over 200 that was available to get. Those people, are they still able to take and give you, or is it kind of a close at this point?
No, that's a great question, Karen. It is still open live. If they submitted a response, we will get their response. And as they submit them, we will definitely add to them.
Good, good. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
I guess I have a question that, do we currently have a nurse in every station, in every school?
We have probably more nurses per student than most districts. We don't have a full-time nurse in every building because of the numbers in some of the smaller elementaries. But in our, we'll have a full-time nurse at the middle school, at the high school. We're adding that, continuing the nurse contract to have from Trinity. So I think it would be fair to say everybody has at least a 0.5 FTE, with most having more.
Okay, well, obviously with the COVID, will they be, or somebody be accessible? Say if we have a student that has an outbreak, that they can get over there.
Yeah, and they do that now. They've got, so if a nurse is covering, has two buildings, if there's something that comes up, they go to the other building and take care of that. So I think with the number of nurses we have, there should not be much of a delay if somebody has a concern that, I think this kid has a fever and what should we do? There shouldn't be a big time delay in making sure someone's there to take care of them.
Okay. I guess I have another question for Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, with this baseball and softball that are going on right now, how are we handling the busing as far as, are they taking, like some of the teams may have more than 13 participants? Are we taking 2 buses? Are we taking a bus and a van, or is it all buses or?
Yeah. Good question, Denny. As you know, each sport has a 24 cap for varsity, and we're just playing varsity this year.
Okay.
We are actually taking 2 buses to make that work when you have players plus coaches. I believe softball maybe is taking 20 traveling, and maybe baseball 22 plus coaches. So we're meeting the guideline as far as, not going over that number. Economically, one of the things we're looking at is seeing how many parents may take their students back after the game.
Right.
If we have enough parents that do that, we may send 1 bus back if we only need 1 bus. If we need both buses to stay, we'll have both buses there.
Okay. All right. Now going into the school year then, since if we have a limitation on the number of people that are on a bus or the bus drivers, will they have to be doing more routes?
Yeah. Good question, Denny. I think, at the 22nd, you'll be presented with several different options. If we go with the 13 per bus, you can address it based on what you're saying. You could add more routes. That's certainly one option. Another option for the district is to look at the busing we're currently doing that we don't have to. We have mile guidelines as far as when we have to bus students. And currently we bus a lot of students that don't fall in that guideline. Okay. So at a certain point, Denny, the board will have that information and then have the option of what do you think the best option is. You mentioned the vans. The vans right now aren't a really good option for us because of the social distancing.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
so for athletics and activities, as well as busing in the fall, we probably won't have access to minivans because of that social distancing.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things too to keep in mind is we currently barely have enough bus drivers now.
Yeah.
To run the routes that we have. So if you add routes, it would probably require more drivers. I don't know where you'd get them.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, Denny, that's probably, talking with other districts, that's one of the more looming issues that most districts are grappling with right now, and they're waiting to see what is going to be the guideline for that in the fall, because it has a huge impact, like you said, on your operations.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you rather us have, present our questions on the 22nd then? And would that be better for us at that point?
I think it would, Denny, because that's when the committees will be there and they will be able to go over their recommendations. And then I appreciated the feedback that you sent me, as well as other board members, and we'll make sure that those questions are incorporated into the discussion on the 22nd.
Okay. All right. Right.
Mike, there is one from what Denny was talking about that may be more permanent now, and that has to do with, are we doing anything like temperature control for these kids that are going for the buses or vans or whatever that we're taking and using to these games, so that we are aware if they have any temperatures or anything?
Yeah, good question. Is kind of I guess ancillary to that, Karen, too, is that we have purchased thermometers for all buildings for the fall. As far as activities, we aren't per se taking temperatures, but we're taking the protocols of, we're asking that students make us aware if they think they have a temperature, and then we obviously would take the temperature. But we aren't at practices or at games taking the temperature of every student. That's
and the public health has really been working, our local public health has really been good at working with our athletic department, looking at, okay, what if closed, or what if, how to handle things. So they're really working hand in hand with public health on what to do if certain scenarios pop up. So it is one of those things of we still know so little about this. We know that kids still really are they may be more in the carrier category than actually get sick with it. But that's still, we still don't know everything there is to know about this virus. So.
Sure. It was just the fact that I had my checkup today at the clinic, and you automatically had to walk in that front door, and right away they aimed that temperature thing at you and did the basic, questions, which was to me no biggie, about being able to do that and just making sure everybody's safe. So that's why I thought maybe if for those vans, if they had ability to have those temperature things, why not take and go ahead and do that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the return to learn plan? I too will thank the team, because I know you all have spent a lot of time, and in the few conversations I've had with some of you, we start down a path and with a question, and it's completely overwhelming to me to even get to one answer, let alone to the next one and to the next one and to the next one. So from temperature checks to transportation to will it be a full day to will it be online, it's a lot. So thank you. And the word on the street is somebody spent a lot of time this weekend pulling together the vetting information. So we appreciate that as well, because I know that didn't happen. I believe that was the key, was they had until really Friday evening is when we were originally looking at submission. Is that true?
Yeah, Friday at noon, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then y'all pulled that together and sent it over. So we appreciate that. We really do.
I mean, if I could just add to this too, high school is working hard at coming up with protocol for the graduation ceremony, and Terry will share a little bit of that. And school people have been working really hard to really ensure our kids' safety. There is an activity that may be going on in the community that is not that may involve some of our kids, but is not a school-sponsored activity. We're not sponsoring it. We're not advocating for it. The prom activity that's being planned is not a school activity. And the reason I bring that up is that again, whenever that something is going to come down the pike from the school, be it graduation or athletics or when school starts, we will have vetted it through our plan and make sure that it is safe for our students and our staff. So that the prom activity, like I said, well, it's not our activity or within our purview. I just want to make sure parents and the community understands that is not part of our return to learn plan and work.
Good point. And I would encourage parents, if you want to know more about that particular activity, reach out to those individuals and ask some good questions, so you either feel good about the activity, or at least you have some information. But I would encourage that as well. Not everything falls under our control, right? All right. Do you have anything else for superintendent update, Jerry?
No, I don't.
All right. As if that was not enough, that's a lot. And we are looking forward to June 22nd to learning more about that. The plan to nail Jello to the wall. That's what I call it. Not to emphasize the plan, but it's got to be that hard to put it all together. So our next item then is follow our action items. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, special education contract, and the school nurse contract. What are the wishes of the board?
Does that include the resignations also, Tammy?
It does. Under the employment recommendations, those are included there.
I guess I'd make the motion to approve, except for to pull out the resignations. So the employment recommendations, so that we can discuss the people that got their paperwork in late.
Okay. So Denny, if I understand correctly, you would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, but pull out just the resignations.
Correct.
To discuss separately. Okay.
Correct.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second that.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda without the resignations listed in that agenda, or in that agenda item. Is there any discussion on the other items that are listed in that motion?
Hey, Tammy, would
Yes.
that the full, all of the resignations, or just the two that Denny is talking about?
Denny, would you like to pull out all of the resignations, or are there just a couple in question?
I guess the two that are in question, I think there's actually 4 in question. I guess I need some clarification on some dates. So I'd like to have 4 that are in question. As far as, do I need to name the people?
Yeah, that would be great if you would.
Okay, it'd be Hudson Johnston, Cassie Montagnon, Jordan Buster, and Natalie Fabian.
Karen, are you okay with that, specifying those 4 since you seconded that motion? Are you all right with that?
I am.
All right. Is there any other discussion on the other items that we're leaving in on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion carries. That takes us then to the, takes us down in our agenda to then where we'll cover the resignations, the 4 resignations that Denny asked to be pulled out separately. Jordan, Natalie, Cassie, and Hudson, correct?
Correct.
All right.
I guess Jerry, I guess I just want to ask, in the contract, does it say that they have to be in by the 20th, or is it the last day of school?
We had communicated, and we'd worked with MEA this year because of the craziness of the year, that we would take resignations up to the end of the year, end of the last school day.
Okay. When was the official date for that?
25th. I'm gonna probably need some help from Jill. I'm trying to remember what that Friday was.
Friday, May 29th, Jerry.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So all 4, I believe, had signed the contract for next year. 2 of those had made the deadline that we had set, and 2 came after the deadline. And we've always worked really closely with MEA on this, because obviously a signed contract is pretty important. If we'd go to a teacher today and say, well, I guess now we don't need you, they'd say, well, hold it, I have a contract.
Right.
And now, when folks want out, I sometimes we have to say, well, hey, we have a contract. So what we have done in the past is that positions, when they don't hit a deadline, is to say, we would consider that, but we need to first find a suitable replacement.
Okay.
The board certainly can waive that. They can, the board can release 1, all, none. It is entirely up to the board, and one release does not set a precedent for another. So it doesn't matter if you could release teacher A and not teacher B, and the union would completely agree that that's completely appropriate for the board to do. It's completely up to the board to who you folks are the ones that have to decide if you're going to release someone from their contract.
In Cassie's letter, she stated that she was an industrial tech teacher, but I think in your memo or something you said that it was she's an ag teacher.
She's an ag teacher, and she is teaching. She is not teaching out of her endorsed area, and some of the courses in ag and industrial tech are almost like twins. For instance, there's welding, but then there's also ag welding. Basically, there's not much difference, but an ag teacher can teach the ag welding. I think Cassie would prefer to not be teaching. She would rather teach, I think, the more traditional courses, horticulture, animal science. But that was the need we had. So she was not teaching out of her endorsements. She was teaching things she didn't prefer. She would have preferred not to teach.
Okay. All right. And so the June 2nd and June 3rd, Hudson was June 2nd and Cassie's was June 3rd. That was 3 days beyond the deadline, evidently.
Right. Yeah, 3 or 4 days. Yeah.
3 and 4 days, yes.
So Dr. Beebe, just to clarify, she was teaching welding. So that's where the shortage, and maybe Mr. Hoganson can answer into this. So that's where we're going to have to find a welding person, not an ag person. Is that what we're looking at?
You're either going to need to find another ag teacher, or you're going to need to find an industrial tech teacher, but you're going to need to find one or the other.
But it's going to be somebody that's going to need to be able to do the welding.
Well, and that's probably, yes, but in those other mechanical type courses, yes. And if Terry is on, he could maybe address her exact what she was teaching, but that I think is pretty well in the ballpark.
we needed to fill an industrial tech position and were unable to find a industrial tech certified person that would be in a natural pool. Cassie, through special kind of cross connections with her curriculum, were able to pick up the industrial tech area. When we hired her as an industrial tech person, but then as the year started, there was a need to cover elementary ag classes, and so she then had her time split between ag and this. So things got a little, I'd call, polluted on what our intentions were for her and what ended up kind of evolving. But what we're looking at right now is needing to have an industrial tech fill.
So along those lines, will we also need to have the ag at the elementary level filled? Because if we're trying to find somebody that can do that, that's going to want to come in and do elementary, a split schedule, high school welding, trying to find a suitable replacement is going to be difficult.
And Mike, the ag is not going to be in the cycle at the elementary next year.
All right, thank you.
And why not?
Time. There's, I think that in order to get everything else in, something had to go. And so that was the recommendation that came from the buildings.
So then is Hudson's position, is that a difficult position to fill also? Is this sixth grade? Is that a sixth grade teacher?
It is now. We have 3 or 4 openings and we have had very few applicants. And I think that part of that is right now, I think there's a lot of people nervous about what fall is going to be like.
Sure. Yeah, I just think it's
into. It is what it is. That you're going to get some resignations in July because the hiring has been so slow in the area. There's going to be people hiring in July. You're going to be probably confronted with some even in August. So I just would want the board to really think through, how you want to handle these, because this will be the early late. You're going to get late before this is all over with, would be my guess.
Yeah, and I can understand if you get something in July or August, holding them to the contract because of the lateness of the year, missing it by 3 and 4 days or 2 and 3 days. I guess my opinion would be to let them go.
Yeah, my only concern, Danny, is at the end of the day, we have to have teachers for our kids.
But I understand that too. But I guess, are these people going to want to? I know they're professionals. Are they going to want to be here?
My question has to do with how much time of communication was going back and forth with Cassie so that she knew what the restraints were, and so that maybe perhaps that's why it was an extra couple of days before that resignation was in.
Yeah, Jill, would you like to address that?
Yes, I could look back and get the exact dates, but I sent out the joint statement from the district and the union 3 times between the time contracts were sent out for signature in May 20th.
And if I'm sorry, Jill, I'm probably gonna overstep here a little bit, but if I'm not mistaken, I think that the original email said that everybody had to have their stuff in by May 20th, and then you guys extended it. So if people were planning, it probably should have been May 20th first, and then you extended it to the 29th.
May 20th is a contract date. That's in the MEA contract.
Right.
I also think it went out to emails, Danny.
Okay.
And just so I'm clear, both people did sign the contract for next year, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So they made a choice to say yes first and then came back past the deadline.
When were contracts issued? And when did they have to be signed?
They had to be signed by May 20th, and they have to have I think it's 30 days to sign it. So they were issued in plenty of time for that deadline.
So I'm sorry, Jill, I'm sorry. When were they issued? May 20th, or they had to be in by May 20th?
They were issued in April and they were due May 20th.
Yeah, that seems to me when I was teaching, it seemed to me that he had 30 days after he's receiving the contract to sign it.
Right.
Okay.
We got them out 30 plus days.
Sure. Okay.
Well, I think if we go back, I remember being on the board also last year and the year before, we had this issue several times. Some, as Dr. Reby mentioned, might happen in August and so on. And I think, a contract is a contract, and once someone signed that contract, they have to respect the fact that they agree to sign that contract. On the other hand, Danny, I see your point is, yes, we are expecting them to be professionals, but also if you are saying no to them, are they doing the right thing the next year, teaching our students or not? I mean, and as I said, I have no doubt that everybody will be a professional too, regardless of the outcome. I do believe that if it's for fairness, I do believe that we need to give ourselves as a district the time to find a replacement before we say you are out or you are released or something like that. I feel, it's a contract is a contract here. It is important, I think, discussion for us as a board now to engage in, because what will happen if we get now someone who decided the same thing to resign in July or something like that? I think having a clear vision becomes very important for us as a board.
And again, I'd repeat you're not held by, if you release people tonight, you could refuse to release people later on. There is no, the law does not allow a release to become a precedent. So it is entirely up to the board on if you, how you want to handle this. I do feel like we worked really, really closely with the union. Like Jill said, the statement that went out 3 times was a joint statement with MEA. We tried really hard to make sure everybody understood where we were at, where we were coming at with this. And I also know sometimes the timing of things just don't work out. But I don't think we're not recommending that they would not be released, but we're recommending they would be released upon hiring of a suitable replacement. But that again,
that's more clarifying to me. I appreciate that. Yeah.
And that's part of the points that I mentioned is that, just to be fair, it's, and my next question, Jerry, is how hard, how difficult to replace them? And do you think they can be replaced within 2 weeks, 1 month? What just an idea?
Well, the odds of getting a 6th grade teacher are higher than finding an industrial tech or an ag teacher. I would say the odds of hiring an industrial tech teacher right now is maybe 2 or 3%. We've advertised, I think, all of last year and didn't have any. There's so few that are coming out of school endorsed in industrial tech. And the reason we went with the ag teacher, that position was not a replacement of an ag person, but it was the best we could come up with to help fill that that area. So I would say that one will be really, really difficult. Now, that somebody could move in the area and need a job and be perfect, but it'll be tough. One of the things that you could look at is getting someone that's not a teacher. They do allow in some areas like that. If you have enough years of experience, you can hire them to teach, welding or some of the mechanic things. And we have looked into that over the last year or so, and even that was hard to find somebody that was willing to or wanting to do that. But we certainly can look at options, and at the end of the day, the board will make a decision and the administrators will make it work.
If we agree to release them upon finding a suitable replacement, not knowing how long that takes, they would also each need to go to their prospective new districts and ask their new districts if they're willing to hold those spots open for them. Right? Because at some point in time, each of them, I think somebody goes to Wapello and somebody's looking to go to Benton. So each one of those school districts are going to have to be willing to say, we'll hold your spots or we'll still offer your contract, because otherwise they're going to be, somebody's out. Either they're out
Right.
or we're out.
And this feels, just like last year, we had the same conversation about positions being very difficult to fill, but we ended up filling them and letting the people out of their contract. So,
one we didn't. One we didn't find a science teacher, and so and it's not released.
Well, I'm just curious about the conversation with the ag, is because I'm on that board area through them, but we have not even in the last several months even had a meeting. So I'm just really curious of what their thoughts are on what is happening with that. So I will get a hold of the folks from there too, as well, just out of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I guess what we need to do, the Jordan and Natalie are obviously released because they got their stuff in ahead of time. So we need to make a motion to release them, since we had a motion not to before, and then make another motion for Cassie and Hudson, contingent upon on finding a suitable replacement. Tammy, is that right?
If the board wants to handle the first two that way, I'm good with that. That kind of separates out what we're talking about. Might be a good idea. So that would put, Denny, if I understand you correctly, Jordan Buster, who that resignation came in on May 27th, and Natalie, I'm going to probably butcher how I say this, Koban. Am I close?
Koban.
Koban.
Sorry,
Koban.
Natalie, if you're listening, I'm very sorry. And that was submitted on May 29th. So those were submitted then within the revised time frame. Jill, is that correct? We extended to May 29th. Did I understand you say that correctly?
Yes.
That is correct, yes.
All right. So do you want to take those two first?
Yeah, I would make the motion to approve those two.
I
Okay.
second that.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the resignations of both Natalie and Jordan based on the letters that were submitted. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion carries. So that leaves Cassie and Hudson. What are the wishes of the board?
I would make a motion that we release them from their contracts if we find if a suitable replacement is found.
I'll second that.
Does anybody want to put a time frame on that?
I think it would make sense to have some kind of a time frame.
Meaning that if a suitable replacement is not found by that time frame, they're going to stay?
Well, just because Tammy mentioned, like if they're trying to possibly go somewhere else, those folks would need to have possible time to talk to theirs about the same. So if everybody then has at least some kind of a new cutoff time, then everybody might know where they sit in the end.
It seems to me that we already have them under contract, and the other two schools would be the ones that would set that timeline.
Right.
Of when
Right.
how long they
True.
want, not us.
Right. And just to expedite this, if the board would go this route of releasing them upon a suitable replacement or a suitable solution, if you would give the administration the capacity to sign off on their release so that they could immediately sign a contract with another district, because they cannot sign a contract with another Iowa district until they're released from us. And I'd hate to have them have to wait till the end of June or in July. That seems to be maybe more of a burden than what it would need to be. So I just wanted to clarify that if the board would consent to that, it would help, I think, move things along for them.
Jerry, I'd like to amend my original statement and include the part that granting the administrators the right to release the contract if we have found a suitable replacement
or solution.
Solution.
Yeah.
I'll affirm my second on that.
Okay. So the motion is pending suitable replacements and or solutions for Cassie and for Hudson. The board would be willing to release their contract. We're also authorizing an administrator to sign off on that release to expedite the process for them to then sign a new contract with another district. Is there any discussion? Okay, that feels like one of the fairest things we can do for both. So I hope Cassie and I hope Hudson will feel that way as well. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. All right. I'm going to back up for just a minute because the one piece that I didn't address that we would have done almost right away in the meeting was to offer a citizen speak. And based on the interesting times virtual meeting, that has been difficult at best. But I would remind our community that anytime that you need to get a hold of a board member, all of our email addresses are on the district website. You can certainly contact the central office at 2900 as well, because they can help direct you in the right place. So it's omitted purposefully to make this a little bit smoother, but not to limit conversation. So please know that. And I'm sorry I didn't mention that at the appropriate place in the agenda. So our next item then is to approve the resolution of participation to renew the instructional support levy for 5 years, which takes us to 2028. Tom, I think this is all you.
Yeah. If you remember, last board meeting, we approved the program of in a resolution of intent, and we published our public hearing notice. The recommendation has been for going forward with a 5-year board approved. Back in September 11th of 2012, it went to the voters. It passed. It was implemented in the 13-14 fiscal year. So we've set our FY21 budget. So that's 8 years of the ISL. So there's 2 years left. So by April of 2023, April 15th, we'll have to have our house in order for either 5-year or voter approved, should it go to the voters. So I gave you information last month about, this is about $2.2 million roughly of spending authority for Muscatine. And that's funded through mainly property tax, but also income surtax. That's how the language was written that was passed by the voters, which means we have to at least do a 1% income surtax every year. Again, the 5-year, this will just extend the expiration of 2023. It'll extend it 5 more years for a board approved instructional support levy. So the resolution of participation was included in the board packet. It basically is the same language that was voted on by the voters in 2012. So, unless you have any further questions, I don't have any other documents to show other than what was done last week or last month, excuse me. So
Tom, when our public hears the word tax, sometimes that can be a little scary. So this is nothing, this is not adding, this is nothing new. This is simply continuing with what's already in place.
That is correct, yeah. And with our, the instructional support levy usually takes about $1.36 of our property tax rate, or that's what it is for this coming school year. You know, and if you remember back to April, our property tax rate has been declining the last several years for several reasons. Declining enrollment, you know, we're maxed out on our cash reserve levy, so we're at our statutory maximum, so we haven't been able to put a cash reserve levy in. So couple different variables why our property tax rate is declining, but the instructional support levy is part of our overall rate by about $1.30.
And Tom, if we were to put this out to a general election, like we did the first time around, the cost of that is roughly.
Oh my gosh, I looked after the last meeting and now I forgot. It's several $1,000s.
I was thinking between 8 and 10. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so depending on what kind of election, if it's a special election, it would probably, the cost would be different because it would just be this ballot item versus having it at a school board election, say in November of 2019 or 2021. So
there are restrictions though on when you can have that election.
There are,
and we so you have a little bit of a timeline that you have to worry about.
So if the board approves the resolution of participation tonight, then there's a 28-day waiting period before all these documents get filed. And that 28-day waiting period would allow for a petition to be started to ask the board to go to a public vote versus the 5-year board approved. So that 28-day would end July 6th. And, you know, if there's no petition, then we would file the paperwork and everything would be extended. But if it would go to vote, we would come back at a future board meeting. We would redo the public hearing because our public hearing said a 5-year board approved. So we'd have to redo the public hearing and then figure out the dates, the first available date that we could do an election. And then we still would have time. You know, that's a 50% +1 majority vote election. So should it fail the first time, we would still have time for a second vote. So.
Well, Tom, I have a question. You said we have 20 days if somebody decided to petition that.
28 days. Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any idea on how many signatures needs to be on that petition?
Yep, it's either 100 or 30% of the number who voted in the last school election. So I got on the website today before the meeting. It would, I think there was around 11,000 voters in the school election. And so that would be around 3,400 or so signatures. So it's the greater of 100 or the 30%. So around 3,400 or so signatures. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tom, when the public voted last time, and I know neither you or I were here, but maybe Tammy or Jerry, they knew that we would have this option to extend as a board for 5 years, right? During that time that they voted.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
We had that option prior to putting it to a public election as well, even the first time around. And I believe that there were maybe 10 school districts in the state of Iowa that didn't use the instructional support levy, and maybe even just a few less than that. So it's widely used as well.
Yeah. But the voters knew we had an option to extend for 5 years as a board by when that vote went through.
Right.
Correct.
And to me, I think financing is going to be critical going into next year and the year after with where we're at with COVID. Plus, you have COVID's health concerns of a vote. So it feels like if there's any time by which it would be a good time to extend for 5 years to get through this, now would be one of those times, right? So I don't know, that's just what I was thinking.
Yep. I agree, Aaron.
Well, you know, that it was put in the legislation for a reason to allow the board to make this call. The public elects a board to make good decisions, financial decisions, and I think there's a reason they put that in there is because they recognize that is an additional cost and time and money to have an election for this. So I think they have had good reason for constructing the law the way they did.
I will make a motion to approve if that's the stage we're in.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution of participation to renew the instructional support levy. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Lisa, would you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Yes. Director Cooney.
Yes.
Director DeVee.
Aye.
Director Drawbaugh.
Aye.
Director Finn.
Aye.
Director Morgan.
Aye.
Director Stewart.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is probably one of my most favorite things that we get to do every year, and that is approve the tentative graduate list for the class of 2020.
And I would like to have the honor to move and approve the tentative graduate list for the 2020 class.
And can we all second that? All of us.
We probably could, or the dad that has somebody in the graduating class might want the honors of seconding that motion. No pressure, Aaron.
I would like to, and I thank you.
All right. So it has been moved and seconded to approve the tentative graduate list for class of 2020. Terry, I don't know if you're still on. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think we say tentative because there may still be some work being done. It is a unique year. So what an exciting year to get to watch students cross the stage in whatever form that looks like.
Tammy, maybe as part of the discussion of this, Terry could give us a little information about where the plan is for the ceremony.
I would love that. Terry, are you up for that?
I will do my very best. Here's kind of where we're at. We're looking at July 2nd, and it will either be on the football field or whether if we have inclement weather, it will be in the auditorium. And so we met last Friday with a parent-student group to kind of vet it for us and talk about our plan that we had established or were establishing, of which they liked to hold about 20% of what we were saying. And so we had to do some regrouping as to how we want to make sure that we make sure that it's the kind of graduation that our students want. And so here's kind of the tentative time frame. I'll go through probably more than you really may want to know at this time, but I'll just go through as quickly as I can. We would, on the morning of the 2nd, do the rehearsal. 6 o'clock, the check-in. The ceremony would begin. At 7 o'clock, there would be chairs out on the football field. We would have them appropriately spaced. We are working on how to make sure that we have our parents enter the stadium to watch the ceremony in a way that makes it safe for them also. We are issuing 4 tokens per student so that we can control the number of people that are in the stadium. We're planning on having it streamed So that way we can have people that are at home watch this that would have probably otherwise attended. We had the plan originally about just kind of coming across the track and going across the stage, but the students provided us with a lot of input that they wanted to see their class together one last time. And that by moving across the stage in that way, it did not give them the sense or the feeling of community that they were looking for. So we regrouped and are looking at having it on the football field in where all the chairs would be out, weather permitting. We have had some parents concerned about just like, is this going to be safe and so on. We're taking every precaution necessary or as much as we can. But we're also letting people know this is a voluntary experience. If they truly feel like this is not for them or their family, that is an option for them to not be a participant in that. And like I said, in inclement weather, we're looking at having it come in on the stage. We'd have one entrance point. They would go across the stage, get the diploma, have a photo op with their family, and then exit. And we would set that up on time frames. So that's a lot. What have I kind of missed that you would like to know about?
Terry, is that going to be streamed live or is that just recorded?
The plan at this time is that we've talked with Chris Anderson, and I believe that it will be streamed live. There will be, and I say that, but there will be a somewhat of a delay. They said maybe, as in most broadcasts, there's just something that with that, so it'll be a little bit of a delay, but otherwise it'll be streamed.
Thank you.
Hoagie, who's going to be the voice now that Mr. Hilton's retired? Is Aaron Finn going to do that?
No.
Aaron would be I would more than welcome that, but Al has volunteered to come back one last time and do this for us as the voice of Muscatine. So we are elated to have him in that role.
There you go. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Mike, for volunteering me.
You are back up.
Terry, I did have a question about speeches. Will there be any opportunity for any of the students or anyone to speak a little bit in that event?
Originally, well, what we're going to do is have everything pre-recorded as a backup. But given the new circumstances of what the student and family wishes were for us to have it the way it is, I still believe we can have presenters on stage do that. That's something that we'll be working out those details so that we should be able to have those speeches provided real time on the stage as we would normally see that done.
Great, thanks.
Terry, what about performances? I know in the past we've had the choir is performed and orchestra is performed, and I know that's a whole bunch of extra people and people close together. And what are you thinking about that?
When we talked with a couple of the individuals like Jonathan and so on, they felt that the complexity of trying to do that was going to be more than they wanted to try to manage. And so we are looking at several options. One would be soloist opportunities that may be done for the battle hymn and so on, so that we could do it that way. We are also discussing using previous performances as a display, as presented as part of that also. So we are still working out some details on that.
All right. Completely understand and respect that they're the concerns they have around that. So we'll be anxious to see what you come up with.
Me too.
Terry, I just want to say that a high school principal that has had to more things this year than you probably would care to have had to deal with. But I really appreciate the work that you've done to make this year end as normally as possible. The work in getting the online things out there with a large high school, I know is difficult, and what you're doing with this graduation is really good work. And I just really appreciate everything you're doing and your attitude.
You're very welcome, Jerry. And I do want to do an official shout out for Jerry also, that I cannot tell you how much his support and leadership has meant to me throughout the time I've been in the district and especially at the high school. So without that support, I would have fumbled the ball many more times. So thank you, Dr. Reeve, for being the mentor that you are.
All right. Well, on that note, the motion is on the table to approve the tentative graduation list. And it has been moved and seconded. And that is for the class of 2020, who will be forever talked about in graduating during a pandemic, I will add. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed? And the motion carries. The return to learn is exciting, but approving the graduation list, it takes the cake in my opinion. So the next item on our agenda is to approve the administrative regulations regarding policy 404.4 R as in Robert 1, substitutes for teaching. Jerry, do you want to give us a little bit of background on this particular administrative regulation?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, sorry,
Glad
sorry,
to do that.
Tom.
Yeah, no problem. So what we're trying to do basically is simplify our substitute pay tiers and actually calling them tier 1, 2, and 3. They weren't called anything except, our subs get paid 80% of 98% of the BA generator base. So we're actually calling them tier 1. Tier 2 is, and they're all still calculated the same. Tier 2 is calculated the same, and tier 3 is a long-term sub. And just so for your information, this is very common among districts, especially in our AEA. We did a survey on substitute pay, and Muscatine we do pay our subs more than any other district in our AEA at $131 a day. This year that just ended, we have a couple districts, several districts, or one district's at 125, and then there's like 5 districts that are about 120. So, just letting you know that we are one of the higher paid districts, and that changes every year. Now, the last 3 years, it didn't change because it was based on the BA base. So, and that's very common too. So next year, there will be an increase for our substitutes also, because we did add money to the base. And then we're just eliminating 4 and 5. Number 4 really has to do with, we can't start a long-term sub in a position at the beginning of the year. Typically what we do is issue temporary contracts. So that's really not even part of this agreement, because we can't issue, we can't pay a long-term sub to start a school year. So HR just handles getting somebody in a position that we can't fill, and we give temporary contracts. And then number 5 is just rolled into tier 3 as a long-term sub. That is just all rolled into tier 3. So, and then the alternate license, we're also just changing some verbiage on there. Tier 1 and tier 2 for people that hold substitute authorization. So that is the changes we're making, and we hope it's pretty much simplified how we pay subs, and we're not keeping track of several different pay rates for substitutes. So,
okay.
May I ask a quick question? It may actually be more for what we're looking at for the return to learn, but how are we have a plan to utilize subs considering what we're looking for return to learn?
Well, I think that's a really good question, because my concern is we are going to be really short of subs, because a lot of the folks that would be typically subbing are in the high risk group. And I think, again, they may look at what they're going to be dealing with, and they may think twice about jumping into those positions. We have struggled with subs the last few years. There are just fewer and fewer available. And as we move towards saying, if you're not feeling well, stay home, we may have more staff absences. And so that is one of the things that the group is kind of looking at. And we've had some internal conversations about, I think subs are going to be a huge problem. I think next year, the Department of Ed is giving us a lot of latitude with how we use instructional coaches. And I think we're going to have to look at that as a possibility for filling in at various times, because, especially if you want to try and keep class sizes small, it's going to take more bodies. So it is a concern.
All right, thank you.
What are the wishes of the board to handle this action item?
I'll make the motion to approve the policy 404.4R1 substitutes for teachers.
Okay, is there a second?
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the administrative regulations regarding policy 404.4R1 substitutes for teachers. Is there any additional discussion or questions for Tom?
The motion is to accept it with all of the suggested changes, correct?
Yeah. Correct.
Yes. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And motion carries. That takes us to our discussion and information portion of the meeting. And the first item under discussion and information is the first reading on policy 401.8, which is payroll periods. We will see this 2 more times on the agenda. So when it is a policy versus an administrative regulation, the policy requires that it go through 3 rounds of discussion. So traditionally, how we handle those are, if you have any specific questions or concerns, in this scenario, you could reach out to Tom. I think, Tom, is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
And do you want to
give the background on this change? It's a very simple change. What we're trying to do in our payroll department is move from processing 3 payrolls a month down to 2. So we're not proposing to change anybody's number of pays per year. We're just going to move that monthly payroll that's paid on the 20th. We're going to move it to the 15th. So now we'll have payrolls twice a month on the 1st and the 15th. Just again, if not for just the ease of our payroll person who has to do a payroll maybe every week during certain times of the year, but we've put in a number of electronic timekeeping and such that allow it helps the payroll process. So in order, another step would be just being able to process payroll twice a month rather than once a month. Everybody was notified that it gets paid monthly already, and I don't think anybody heard any objection of getting paid 5 days sooner than they were. So that'll continue to be a monthly payroll on the 15th. So that's the background.
So we'll see that 2 more times on our agenda before that 3rd time it'll be moved into for an action item.
Okay.
The next item is the first reading on policy 900.15, which is community use of school districts' facilities and equipment. And there are 3 administrative regulations that go along with that: R1, R2, and R3.
Yep.
And there is an exhibit. Who gets to talk about this one?
This again is Tom.
I can start. We formed that facilities use committee, and that was made up of Jill Reynolds and Wendy Schmelzer, Jeff Miller, Tom Olsis, Mike Morgan, John DeBeat, Karen, and myself. We've met 2 times, and the part is a board policy, and we took IASB's sample board policy and we just tweaked them for Muscatine schools. And then the second part is our groups and our fee schedule. And that was worked with Jill Reynolds and Wendy and Jeff Miller and Tom Olsis got together, came up with the groups. They've done a lot of work as a kind of a subcommittee of the Facilities Use Committee to put those groups together. And so, like I said, we've met twice. And the second time, we finalized what you see here before you. So I will let any of the committee members just chime in if you want to add anything. But we have this first reading is being presented here tonight. So
I think if I can add one thing, Tom, the new process will be much easier and much simpler than the old one. The old one used to be, let's say, I don't remember how many pages, and now it went down to few. I want to say few pages. So it made it much simpler and much easier to deal with.
And I will say too that we are Jill Reynolds and Wendy and Mike and Jeff and Tom are implementing a electronic system of renting our facility. So that is going to be a huge plus also.
Or anything on the committee?
Have we charged in the past for your program? Did you get that?
Jenny I would say in the past we hadn't charged for feeder programs, but the real conversation was what was a feeder program, because we had people that were charging fees to play and actually using it as a job, but they were saying that they had people that went into our program, so they actually were feeding our high school programs when maybe 1 out of 30 kids actually went into the high school system. I think that the way that it's set up, what I saw, what I liked about it was if you included everybody, and this was kind of some of the conversations I had a couple years ago with the coaches, if it included everybody, there was no fee. If you were charging a fee, then to your people to be on your team, then now there's a nominal fee for use of our facilities.
Right. I guess when I coached, I guess it was I had the approval as the coach who was my feeder programs, and if they didn't have all Muscatine kids, then they weren't a feeder program for me. And I guess I didn't know if that was still the policy or if that would be the, I guess, the fee program. I don't know. So.
I think that that's kind of the policy from the standpoint of, again, if it's Muscatine kids and we're not charging anybody or we're not cutting anybody, then there's no fee to use our program or use our facilities. It's just they need to go through the right process and work with Jill and schedule into that. But if they're a cutting program, then there'll be a nominal fee.
Well, there is a fee. I guess that'd be Group B, so that'd be a $4 an hour fee for a main gym, or a $3 an hour. A nominal fee, but there is a fee.
Right.
Okay.
But I think if I remember correctly, and unfortunately I was not able to be physically at each of those meetings, so that's why I mentioned I saw Tom's YouTube specials on that. But the thing that I remember from it is the importance of making sure that everybody went through the right person or persons to take and make sure they have the contract, whether it is actually free or if they paid something.
Right. I guess I just know how important it is to have those feeder programs, to have a successful program. And it's a nominal fee. It's not that much. I mean, they can handle that. Who does the coach still determine who the feeder program is?
I think it's listed in that program. Jill can speak to it. I'll let her.
Yeah.
Since Tom Alsis isn't here, I can help out for a minute. So Tom Alsis put out, like Mike had back in the day, it's a feeder program application. And what they do is it has the guidelines and the criteria on there to be a feeder program. And they have to go along with, like Denny, you would probably remember something like this. It's how the coach's philosophy, the feeder program that is actually a feeder program has to follow on the coach's philosophy on how they want to teach or how they want to coach. So it seamlessly works into the high school program. So your feeder program coaches on the same line as what the head coach is like. And so then it's a nice transition into with the same philosophy as the head coach has or as the Muscatine School District coaching staff has, as well as the AD. And then also the head coach signs off on that team too. So on the form itself, there's a head coach signature. So the head coach has presented the paperwork. So they do have like what you mentioned, Denny, was they do sign off on whether they think this is a viable team or something that would follow what their thinking is. So that is part of the feeder program application. And if you guys wanted to see that, I'm sure Tom also wouldn't mind sharing that with you at all.
Okay.
Can I weigh in just a minute? Because I'm the old boy in the club here. So the way this comes about is, and Joe will attest to this, I've been around, you have certain coaches that book up blocks of time that just take up all the gym time, and then it makes our job that much difficult. And so this our school thing should really help this out. And you're right, Denny, it's a nominal fee. I've known you a long time. I agree with everything you say, but I don't think anybody's going to be hurt by this.
Yeah. I just didn't know what the rationale for the policy change was. So thank you.
And remember, we're adding this to our board policy. So we've not had a policy in the past. We've just had kind of a system that we followed, and we actually tried to make it even more simpler. That was kind of one thing I stressed. We didn't want to like get into the nitty gritty and try to, we're probably not even going to break even as far as, our time and effort as employees of the district. But I think it's simplified, and 2 years down the road we can tweak it and make it even more simple if we need to. So.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Yep. And I will just note that on the bottom of R2, there is a separate agreement with the city of Muscatine. So that is not part of this board policy. So that would be coming to the board at a future board meeting, what that agreement is. So.
Any other questions for Tom? All right, so we'll see that 2 more times before final approval. And I appreciate Jill, Jeff, I appreciate you all chiming in on that and providing some additional clarification. Thank you. All right, Tom, you're on a roll.
Okay, so the April financials are in the board book today. And, I really, again, I don't have a lot of comments on our reconciliation, on our fund financial summary. I will point out on page 3 of the expenses to published budget, in the month of April, we did exceed our published budget for facilities acquisition and construction and AEA flow through. Just what that means is we have a comment in our audit report for FY20. Not a huge deal. It's a comment. In order to rectify it for future years, this is the document that we will use so that we don't, if we happen to be reaching towards that published budget, we will have to do an amended budget. And, I've told boards, and prior to this job, it's not anything to be alarmed about. It doesn't raise property taxes. It just, there's a timing issue, especially on construction projects. We used all of our resources in FY19. And so we didn't, because construction projects go in between, in June and July, and you're in between fiscal years, it really kind of, you have to, take some extra looking at the facilities acquisition and construction. So on the last two pages, the revenue and expense, I will just point out again, we're within our where we were last year as far as revenues received according to budget and expenses expended. I would just point out on property taxes. So April, you might notice April property taxes year to date, we've received 87% versus last year at this time, 95%. And that is, I would attribute that to, the governor's recommendation for businesses and people not to have, they weren't required to pay their property taxes by March. So what we're going to do is just see, July is that new deadline. So we'll probably see next fiscal year some property taxes come in for the current fiscal year. But again, I'm not, alarmed. We're still right within our budget that we projected. So that's it.
I was expecting, Tom, way more when it comes to the difference between last year and this year property tax receipts. And looking at that is around just like 7% difference. So that's a good thing. That's
so $2 million. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that takes us to our announcements, meetings, and events. So here's a recap of what we have coming up in the district. June 9th, which if I'm correct is tomorrow, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure I didn't lose a day in there. June 9th and the 23rd, the Riverbend Mobile Food Pantry will be at the MCSD Administration Center at 4:30 p.m. We are currently doing a grab and go model, which has been utilized the last several times. We'll continue with that. No one will be allowed to enter the building. We appreciate volunteers who have still been, I know we've been working to limit the number of volunteers and working hard with social distancing to still prepare for the food bank. And I know there are some new procedures that have been put in place. So Mike, I think you've led that effort and we certainly thank you for doing that. And for all those that are, again, to have 2 events a month has been great. On June 22nd, we've added an additional board meeting. It's a special board meeting. We'll be meeting at 6 p.m. That'll still be a virtual meeting due to COVID-19. The board will be reviewing the regulations and recommendations, I almost made a word up there, regarding the return to learn plan. So the team that has been working so hard will be continuing to do that and share a little bit more in depth with us on that meeting. And if I'm correct, I think that's almost the only thing that we'll be reviewing that night. Then that takes us to July 2nd, which will be the class of 2020 graduation ceremony. Carrie outlined a lot of those pieces. I think it's everyone's responsibility to please ask for nice weather. So whoever you send a note to, whoever you order that from, and then July 13th takes us to our regularly scheduled board meeting. It will be at 7 p.m. And we'll see whether we get to look at each other in person or whether we're still virtual at that time frame. But we'll make sure that we communicate that early and often so you know where to find us. Any other announcements?
I just one quick comment. This weekend, I went up and walked through the new science room, and it is absolutely phenomenal, and it's going to everyone in this community can take great pride in it. So what I'm going to kind of volunteer Mike on this. If maybe in groups of 2 or 3 on a couple evenings or an evening, if you'd mask up, that maybe the board could have a a quick tour of the new construction, because it is out of this world. And the work that Mike has done in getting this thing corralling from the grants to making sure the day-to-day stuff is working on that, and Ryan and Jeff, and making sure that it's all going to work out the way we had dreamed. It's amazing. So I'd really, rather than having to wait till the grand opening, I think the board would really like to see what this is going to look like. So, Mike, is that something that maybe could be worked out?
Oh, absolutely, Jerry. Be happy to set that up whenever it's convenient for the board.
All right. So we could reach out to Mike maybe with some dates that work. Does that sound good, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. That would be fabulous. All right. Anything else?
I just want to say thank you to Dr. Reeby for all of his time that he spent here. I know that he's planning on this being his last month. So thank you for all you've done to move us forward and to get us where we're at right now.
Thanks, Mike. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have been here. And I say I couldn't find a better place to have ended my career. And I wish nothing but the best for this district. I know you're going to head in the right direction. So it'll be good.
And I hope you enjoyed your drive-by that we had for you.
I did. You know, some superintendents would be afraid of a drive-by, that there may be some other activities involved. That it was very, very touching, and I would be lying to you if I said more than one tear came to my eye with that. It was really amazing, and I just appreciate everything that people have done here. So.
Well, Jerry, it's been a heck of a way to end your career as well. And never once have you let up on the gas as we have worked through this pandemic. In fact, I think it's been just the opposite. It's been run harder and faster and longer with all that has happened. So the school district owes you a great thanks for all you've done.
It's all been a team effort. And we have really good people in this district.
Well, with that, you're not off the hook yet. I know we're going to see you one more time.
22nd, yeah, absolutely.
Good. All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. I'm going to assume there's no discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, everyone that joined us this evening. Thank you to the team for all the information. Stay safe and stay well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tam.